All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Mike Connolly. I'm the current chair of the East King Chambers Coalition. It's my pleasure to welcome you to our annual legislative kickoff. For more than 20 years, East Side business leaders came together, 20 years ago, business leaders came together and formed the East King Chambers Coalition to advocate for critical business legislation for the East Side. The coalition brings together 11 chambers of commerce representing the East Side business community. It enables these chambers to speak with a unified voice on legislative issues. Represented chambers include Bellevue, Bothell Kenmore, Issaquah, Kirkland, Maple Valley Black Diamond, Mercer Island, One Redmond, Renton, Sammamish, Snow Valley, and Woodinville. And having these folks, watching them work together month after month, I'm just going to do a round of applause here for these guys. It's a huge asset to our business community. Our coalition represents businesses of all sizes and sectors across the East Side. So while the communities we represent may be different, we all share a commitment to promoting public policies which are pro-business, pro-jobs, and pro-growth. For today's event, our panels will be focused on the coalition's priority issues: budget, business climate, transportation, housing, workforce, and public safety. Before we begin, we'd like to thank our event and coalition sponsors, beginning with presenting sponsor Amazon, leadership sponsor Microsoft, and advocacy sponsors T-Mobile, DoorDash, and TikTok. And a shout out to our reception sponsor Meta and our event partners Boeing, Salesforce, and the Port of Seattle. Thanks a million. We would also like to thank all the elected leaders, panelists, and attendees alike for coming to our event today. If you are an elected official, please stand and just give us a wave. Great. And lastly, before we get started, I urge you to check out the legislative agenda on your tables, which includes summaries of the East King Chambers Coalition's legislative priorities for the year. Full versions of the position papers can be found online at go.eastkingchambers.org/agenda or by, more easily, scanning the QR code on your program. The coalition worked very hard on these papers and putting their heads together to find common ground to ultimately defend the East Side's interests as a conglomerate, so please do continue to refer to these throughout the session. Now, it is my pleasure to hand things over to Washington Roundtable's new president, Rachel Smith. And our first set of panelists, please join me in welcoming education, workforce, and public safety participants to the stage. Rachel and panelists, please join Rachel.
Well, good morning, everyone. It is so great to be here with all of you and to start this new year focused on really issues that are foundational to our state's future: education, workforce, and public safety. You all know this, but these are really the systems that shape things like opportunities, support strong communities, and drive Washington's economy. Whether we're looking at how well our education system is preparing young people and students, how effectively our workforce systems connect people to jobs, or how we ensure public safety access across the state. This conversation is about making sure that those systems really are working better for Washingtonians. This morning, we are joined by 4 legislators who bring insight, experience, and real commitment to supporting Washington families, employers, and communities. It is my absolute pleasure to be here with them, and I'm grateful to have their voices as we think through what's possible and what's needed in the session ahead. So I'm going to briefly introduce them, and then we will jump right in. So please join me in welcoming Representative Brian Burnett from the 12th Legislative District, Representative Roger Goodman from the 45th Legislative District, Representative Zach Hall from the 5th Legislative District, and Senator Lisa Wellman from the 41st Legislative District. Thank you. All right. Get myself situated here. So I wanted to start with all four of you answering the first question, which is a little bit of a reflection for the year since we are starting the new year. So for you, let me ask, what stands out as the most impactful outcome from the last legislative session? Is there anything that you are particularly proud of, anything that surprised you, or anything that you would want to note for the audience here? And why don't we start to my left?
Well, hi everyone. This is my first time ever being here. I'm the newest member of the House of Representatives. I was appointed in June when Victoria Hunt was appointed to the Senate in the 5th Legislative District. So I'm heading into my first legislative session in Olympia come Monday. So I was not around in the last legislative session, but I do have to say I came from 6 years serving on the Issaquah City Council. House Bill 2015 that was passed last session was hugely helpful for us to be able to continue to fund public safety services, crisis response services in our community, something that we were really pushing for and really glad to see come out of Olympia.
Take it down the line here.
Okay. Yes. Good morning, everyone. Zachy just stole my thunder because House Bill 2015, three different grant programs actually for local law enforcement, came out of the governor's promise when he ran to put $100 million into law enforcement. I have some more ideas about how to deploy that money in the coming session. But yeah, local law enforcement is really being helped by these new grant programs.
Good morning. As a freshman legislator, I think kind of reflecting back a little bit as 12 years as an elected sheriff and 25 years in law enforcement is sometimes we try to get out in front of ourselves. And what I mean by that is you have these great ideas, you want to make good policy and impact, but sometimes just because you can get it through the House doesn't mean you can get it through the Senate that easy, and it takes relationships, it takes communications, and working on a lot of different things. But for me, I've always wanted to focus on how do we make our communities safer and a better place to live, and there's a lot of things that go into that. And so for me, this year we'll be prioritizing what I believe that I can make the best impact and help people make our communities safer and keep our quality of life the way that we want them to be moving forward, not just for us, but for our children and our grandchildren.
So I chair the Early Learning K-12 Education Committee in the Senate. I also sit on Ways and Means. I sit on the Energy, Environment, and Technology Committee, and also on the Arts Commission and the Women's Commission. One of the things that stood out to me last session was having to pivot very quickly and try to hold on to programs that really work for people and their children and families and communities. And so I think we were able to do a lot of it, not as much as we wouldn't. And when we saw things where we had to reduce funding, like for foster kids, you really know the challenges and the impact of that. But I do think we held on as much as we could. We made some advances in housing in terms of keeping costs lower if possible. And I think that we're going to be looking at a very challenging time this session. One of the things that I am proudest of was to hold on to what we could, but also it turned out that last session, one of the bills that I did in my very first time in the Senate, the first session that I had, or the first 4 years, was Keep Washington Working and recognizing immigrants in our workplace. And thank you. According to our Attorney General, we have the strongest, best bill in the country, and I think that is a tribute to Washingtonians and to an understanding that when the doors open in this hotel, when the crops are brought in, it is partly because of immigrants' role in our workplace. And I know I don't see very many Native Americans, indigenous people in this audience, so we're all, most of us are here, having come as immigrants and are now enjoying the benefits of the United States. And I hope we can continue that.
Wonderful, thank you. So I'm going to direct some questions to some of you individually, but I want you to feel free if you have anything to add to please jump in. So Representative Burnett, since 2021, the state of Washington has been working towards its goal of doubling the number of manufacturing jobs, but some of the recent data shows that growth has been slower over the last few years. What can the legislature do to help boost the industry and get us a little bit closer to the state's goals?
Well, I think I just go back to, let's go back to our municipalities and our counties and the communities and small businesses. Let's start there. How do we support small business adventure? Because the small businesses generally that are successful turn in time to be those larger ones, or those people go on and help do things around our communities that support the larger manufacturing and the other businesses, the Microsofts. I mean, it's not just the Microsoft and the Boeings alone. They depend on so many other entities. So keeping the state in the lane that says, you know, in certain regulations, we have to have safety and security to a certain level, but over-regulation puts an undue burden into those small businesses that reflect back to the large corporations as well, and those mean jobs for Washingtonians and abroad. And so we want to keep those businesses here, both small and large, and I think over-regulation, unmandated, unfunded mandates on different things in our communities, even in our local governments, are the things that we need to really keep an eye on. And because the local building, when we look at the housing market and different things like that, I hear from Chelan County and Douglas County and Snohomish County and King County and parts and say that's what they're struggling. When we talk to the contractors and the builders and the property investors, they're coming saying, these are the things that we can do to make it easier. And some of the regulating factors are making it hard. And then when we get into the local planning departments and then they stack those things up, it's just a multiplication factor. So we need to reduce that a little bit and allow them to work.
I just want to shout out to the community and technical colleges because the pipeline of, I just had a really long breakfast yesterday with Amy Morrison from Lake Washington Institute of Technology, an amazing leader. And without these workforce colleges, we wouldn't have the pipeline of workers for manufacturing and other jobs. So we have, I think, in the nation, probably the best network of workforce colleges, and a lot, of course, in this area at Bellevue College and so forth. So just wanted to shout out to them.
Great, thank you. Well, maybe we'll stick with the theme of sort of education and workforce. Maybe I'm stretching a little bit here, but and I'll direct this question to Senator Wellman, Representative Hall, or others if you want to jump in here. So, over the last decade, you know, Washington has added billions in new K-12 spending, a significant and important contribution by the state to our education system. And we obviously want to see the corresponding academic growth and the outcomes that students need. In fact, according to NAEP, a test taken by students across the country, proficiency rates amongst Washington's 4th and 8th graders have declined in math and reading since 2015. So the question is, you know, how should the legislature consider or approach ensuring that we get those outcomes that we want to see?
Well, as you know, we're still up against a really tough budget, and so it's really difficult to get some of the innovative programs in. We have Senator Slatter will be bringing forth a P20 bill, which really focuses on enabling people in our communities to contribute, as we have seen in our early learning K-12 system. We were able to receive a wonderful gift from the Balmer Foundation for Early Learning, and we want to open the door for other community members to contribute to our committee. One of the things we've seen, I was visiting the Mercer Island School District, and they have an incredible program to make sure that kids can read well by grade 3. It's that kind of thing that is expensive to bring in, but we need to be looking at those very specific things. We know that there are key times. I don't know if you're aware that Washington is the only state in the country that doesn't require kids to be educated until they're 8 years old. And as a former teacher and someone who, you know, studied to be a teacher, took child development, I think it's actually outrageous that is out there. Even if you are homeschooling, those early development years are so critical, as we know from from the iLab at University of Washington, as well as the Herring Center, et cetera. We know those early years are important. So making sure that those kids have the education that they need, that early achievers start that we focused on. Now we have to look at some programs that we would love to bring into the state. Stand for Children has been very vocal about making sure that that 8th, 9th grade transition through middle school into high school is another key time when we have to be aware of what's going on. And then, of course, the governor has a FAFSA for all. I don't know if you're aware, but almost every child who wants to go to college in the state of Washington has financial support. I think we have the largest financial support for college of any state. And now with the FAFSA, we want to make sure that everybody knows that if they choose to, there's money there for them. So we're working on things like that. I'm going to stop now because there's other questions, but obviously I could go on. I'm pretty passionate about this.
That's great. Rep. Holland, anything you want to add there?
Well, I'll just echo that, early learning is a huge part of that, making sure we're setting our kids up for success long term. The other thing I'm hearing from school districts in district when I'm going around the district meeting before session is, and the questions that I'll be asking in the legislature this year are there potentially targeted opportunities for more flexibility at the local level for local school districts who know the needs of their students really well, and so trying to find where it makes sense to be a little bit more flexible when it comes to graduation requirements, things like that, that help set our students up for success.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, Representative Goodman, sticking with the theme of workforce and education, and Senator Walen, you might want to jump in on this as well. So, we know that 75% of job openings in our state are going to require post-secondary credential, be that apprenticeship, degree, or other certification, but only 40% of Washington high school students are expected to go on and complete a credential by the age of 26. So how do we ensure that our students are ready for post-secondary education and training, and how do we help get them there?
I'm going to throw a little zinger in here. We need to get cell phones out of schools. My son just graduated from Lake Washington High School, and my daughter 4 years before that, and the presence of social media and these smartphones for these young people is really debilitating, and the science is clear. It's actually affecting their brains. This is why student achievement has gone down since 2012, and so I think a major thing we can do is bell to bell. So there are some proposals to have the phone, available between instructional periods, and that is distracting enough as well. So I think one really big thing we can do is get these smartphones out of schools and bring students' attention back to their learning.
We love a zinger, so thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I totally agree with the information about cell phones. We've known that for quite a while. I also think that has been something that any teacher in his or her classroom, any principal in his or her school, any district has the right to do and has already done across the state in many, many cases. So I think that the question is, do we really need a bill to do it and to enforce that, or do we allow the schools to make the decision on their own? We'll see how that turns out this session. One of the things that I will say to every parent in the room, do you know what your kids are doing on that device after 8 o'clock? I think that there's, in terms of getting kids prepared for the industries of tomorrow, I think that there's a lot of things that we can do that I've been working very much on. As you know, we have Aviation High School, we have Maritime High School, we have in the Vancouver area, Henrietta Lacks, which is focused on making sure that kids have the ability to go to a school that is tied to a clinic, and so to get medical training, healthcare training, and we have an outstanding system of skill centers across the state. We've done a lot of work in the last few years to make sure that those skill centers are available to kids. In some cases, schools were sending their kids because they didn't want to pay for the transportation back and forth, and there was no way for the kids to get there. So making sure the system works, I think, is really important. Our high school and beyond plan, I think, will be important in making sure that kids become more aware of what is possible. It's a way for colleges to tell kids about their programs and for young people to understand what the jobs of tomorrow might look like. So a lot of work there.
I'm gonna do it this way. Actually, I'm gonna give this right back to you, Representatives Burnett and Goodman. I'm gonna ask this question to both of you. So switching gears just a little bit, and no pressure on this one, but how do we finally fix the issue of homelessness in our region? But in all seriousness, I think together, our state and cities and nonprofits and corporations and companies, have made significant investments working to house folks in our state. But homelessness, as you know, continues to rise across Washington. And I would just love to hear, do you think we're spending on the wrong things? Do you think that that it's going to take more than money? Are there policies that we should be looking at? Or are there things like homelessness and, substance use that we need to be tying together? Just love your thoughts on sort of where we're going on homelessness from here.
Thanks. I see two distinct population of unhoused people. The first are what we have for many years thought of, the sort of unemployable people suffering from behavioral health disorders, languishing on the streets. For that, I believe, and this comes back to House Bill 2015 and the need to provide funding for crisis outreach, and not just crisis outreach, and we're doing some of it, and we're leading the nation in that, but to outreach to people on the street is the first step, but the engagement and the case management and the hard work with them is what we really need to focus on. So actually, that's one of my two top public safety priorities is even though crime rates are now at historic lows, people don't believe it because what they see in public spaces is disorder and people, again, mostly suffering from behavioral health disorders, but also creating a disorder that provides opportunity for those with criminal intent. So it's complicated. So we really do need to focus on our public spaces so that people's perception of safety meets up with the facts that crime is at all-time lows. As far as homelessness itself, removing the obstacles, regulatory and so forth, to greater housing supply, that's the other population. We have sort of an economically displaced people who are housing insecure. I'm not saying that they're sleeping in the bushes and so forth, but they're couch surfing and really don't have secure homes of their own. And so for that, we need to invest more in the Housing Trust Fund, and again, remove obstacles to creating the housing stock. We're, I don't know, 300,000 units short at this point. So for each of those populations, there's investments that we need to make.
Well, this is just such an easy thing to snap your fingers and fix overnight. Really, it comes down to a couple different things. I look at short-term crisis versus long-term crisis, and we have to focus on both of them and across the board. And I'll give you a simplistic thing that we did when I was sheriff in Chelan County is we created a co-responder response team where we brought behavioral health specialists in to work with the sheriff's office. They became our employees. They help identify people in crisis. And we try to find them resources because you can, what Rep. Goodman was referring to is you have people that want to be there, and no matter what you do, it's hard to get them to move in the direction that where we can provide them services and actually help them for a long-term outreach. And then you have people that are in a position for a number of reasons, one that they've created on themselves, or circumstances that they had no control of, and those are the people that are interested in those resources and trying to get them to move towards that. And then when we're allowed to do that, we can unplug our 911 system and allow our police and first responders to respond to the calls that are the imminent danger and the other types of things. But we need to wrap around also. We need to be partnering with local, state, federal, because all of those different policies from the local level to the state level to the federal level and what those policies look like from other countries in the infiltration of dangerous drugs, human trafficking. This is something I'm very passionate about and I'd love to talk to people more about that and the impact of that. And I think we're just about ready to pop a cork off of things that people don't really want to know that exist because it's such a hard thing to say, I can't believe that's being done in my community, but that's not a reason not to address it. So I'm hoping that we can build a coalition between the House and the Senate with our members here today, moving forward, that will actually help identify those crises from around the state and then work across, not just the aisle, but work across those boundaries from the local, state, and the federal level, because what we see now, especially on the social media, and you don't even know what truth is half the time anymore, and you have to really dive deep to figure out what that is. But we need to stop that, and we really need to come together and go, hey, if this isn't working now, let's identify why, and let's work together to find solutions for the future. And I think that's the greatest thing we can do.
Did want to add one thing about supportive housing. Supportive housing, and I want to congratulate my hometown of Kirkland and Redmond for really taking the lead to provide what the research shows is actually not only humane but cost effective. Those who are languishing on the streets and suffering mostly from substance use and other mental illness need a place, they need a roof over their head at night. You can't solve any of your problems if you have no safe place to sleep at night. So these supportive housing projects are really well intended and are working very well.
And I think I saw both mayors of Kirkland and Redmond in the room, so let's give them a round of applause. Thank you. Okay, Representative Hall, this is going to be your first legislative session, as you said, and you've stepped into some weighty committee assignments: transportation, environment and energy, local government. So wanted to give you a chance to just kind of talk with folks about yourself, what you want to achieve this year, and how's the transition been, and what are you most looking forward to?
Well, yeah, there's a lot in that question. Yeah, well, I could tell you from day one, it is night and day different between the city council and the state legislature. But I'm really enjoying myself. There's a lot to learn. I'll tell you that right now. This kind of half of the interim that I had from June through now January has been spent on that. Some of the top issues I'm going to be working on and advocating for, my number one choice for committee was the Transportation Committee. So, of course, in my district, we have State Route 18 coming up on I-90 and 405 on the southern part of that. That is a hugely important corridor, not just in our district for life safety, but also for commerce that goes through the area. Very unsafe, so we'll continue fighting for that. Breaking news, just if you haven't seen it, in the governor's budget proposal, there is no anticipated cut to funding for that project, which I was actually really surprised about because it costs so much money. One of the other first questions, just sticking on transportation, that I had coming into this was, what are we doing around preservation and maintenance of our roads and our highways, and how do we have more targeted conversations about that in the state legislature to make sure that we're committing the resources that we need to those important funds in transportation. Just coming from local government, you set aside the money that you need to for concrete and pavement management over your 6-year time frame in your capital improvement program. Of course, it's not quite as simple as that at the state level, as I'm learning, but I'm hoping we can make some meaningful strides there. Yeah, pretty weedy committee assignments, absolutely, including environment and energy. I'm thrilled to be the vice chair of that coming into this first session. There's going to be a lot of stuff coming up around data centers, around meeting our CETA requirements, our Clean Energy Transmission Act requirements, and things like that. So if you have any interest in kind of getting in the weeds and talking about environment and energy, I'm happy to do that.
Excellent, thank you. Well, I'm going to focus on public safety for just one more minute, and then I'm going to give you a lightning round last question. But before we do that, so Representatives Goodman and Burnett, so talking a little bit about public safety, just quickly, what's the public safety issue that you find most pressing right now? And then two, obviously, a lot of folks have expressed excitement about the passage of the local public safety grant funding. You both mentioned that. But some cities have said that they've struggled because those funds haven't been distributed. And because the Criminal Justice Training Center has denied some of their applications, just some of the issues around that. So what will you do to kind of ensure those funds are getting out the door? And then second question, top priority on public safety.
So yeah, there have been some bureaucratic hiccups getting the money out the door, some a little bit too strict requirements on the application. So no money actually has been provided to any police agency at this point. A little bit disappointed in that. So we can work that out. As far as the business community is concerned, so first of all, crime in pretty much every category is at historic lows. From 2023 to 2024 was a historic decline in crime. This is nationwide. Violent crime, property crime, all of it. And from 2024 to 2025 was almost a doubling. Crime is at 1966 levels at this point. But again, people don't believe it because of what they see in public spaces. But there is a very interesting issue that police are not able to solve crimes. The clearance rate or the solve rates are very, very low. And so police need to be deploying their personnel in a different way to find suspects and to arrest and to, to close cases. There's sort of a little bit of less of confidence in the system if we're not able to do that. But for the business community, there are two major issues. We're going to be holding hearings and trying to move bills through. One is organized retail theft, organized retail crime. If there is any crime problem that has not gone down, it is that. So we are I'm going to be hearing a bill sponsored by Representative Levitt related to organized retail theft. We've made some progress providing targeted, we have pilot projects in 3 different areas of the state right now, targeted prosecutors, targeted law enforcement, and that really is helping the problem. The other is critical infrastructure. There are those who are looking for copper. Copper is high value, and they're ending up clipping not just copper, but fiber optic and ruining service for tens of thousands of people. So there needs to be accountability for vandalism of critical infrastructure and theft, and that's another bill that's going to be moving through, sponsored by Representative Ryu. The portfolio of public safety issues is endless, but I really do want to focus on providing help to the business community for those problems right now.
Well, I mean, there's no doubt that our dangerous drug epidemic that we have is creating a different outcome on the other end, and how that impacts behavioral health, how it impacts the economy as well. And Rep. Goodman touched on that. Some of the presentations we had during committee week back in early December in community safety talked about those type of things. The one crime rate that's up and alarmingly staying up and not dropping down since 2019 is the serious crimes by our juvenile population. And so we need to get a grasp on that and figure out what's going on there. I think there's some social impacts from the past, and I think everybody would agree in this room. There's a lot of different things that go into that. It's not just one thing. It's just not the isolation from COVID and the impact from that. There's a lot of different things. Obviously, how do we manage, again, to get to those people in crisis? That's going to be very important. And then for me, it's very, very important that we look, it's like if we have young people committing, whether they're a low-level crime or an upper-level crime, serious person crime, is like eventually they're going to come back into community. They're going to come back into society, and we have to say, are they rehabilitated? Do they want to be rehabilitated, and can we convince them that there's a reason that's good for them to be and actually strive for that? And do we have people that can come in next to them and help them through that opportunity? And we need to relook at those programs inside, invest the money up front for rehabilitation for our juvenile offenders, but also for our adult offenders as well, so they can reentry in a way that's beneficial to community and society.
Great, thank you. Okay, so in one sentence or less, is there a policy priority that you have not mentioned so far on the stage? It's okay if the answer is no.
Talking about juveniles, access to firearms is really creating a problem. A lot of young kids don't feel safe, in marginalized communities in particular, really don't feel safe. And so they feel like having a gun is a way to defend themselves. It's wrong-headed, and yet one thing leads to another, then people are injured and killed. So we really need to get guns out of the hands of young people. Guns are now 3D printed, so guns are everywhere, like machine guns in your hand. So we need to get guns out of the hands of young people, but not punish them. We need to wrap around them.
How can we not have talked about AI? It's impacting every part of our society, and certainly it is very obvious and involved with our kids. And so making sure that our kids are safe as far as their online experience is concerned. There are a number of bills, one I worked on with the governor and others there, that to provide safety for oversight for our kids as far as AI is concerned. I'm a science fiction reader. I love Asimov and the 3 laws of robotics, and there ain't any laws of AI that I can see. It's out there, and it's the wild, wild west, and there's a lot of obvious danger that is in the programs, as well as the impact that AI needs the energy of our data centers. Our data centers need to have an energy grid that can support them, which is not possible yet. So there's a systems approach that we need to take to resolving problems. I'm a systems gal, and I think that we need to be looking at the impact of AI. How can we work with it and make it work for us?
Taking care of our children that have been victimized upon predators, from sexual to physical, and to the people that have chose to create them harm, that gives lifelong lasting impact to them mentally. And if you want to talk about PTSD and the impacts of that, when you talk about an adult female being violently raped and the impact that is to her, let's talk about a child that's had that done over and over and over. We need to start holding people accountable, and we need to do some things that is right for our vulnerable population.
Real quick, clean up around the rent stabilization bill too. I think you'll probably see some policy around the certified mail notices, and also an opt-in program for email first.
Wonderful. Let's give a big round of applause to this great panel. Thank you all so much.
Hey everybody, good morning. Thanks for coming today, and thanks to the legislators that were just up here and the ones that we have now. It seems like this is an annual occurrence with the same faces up here every year, so this is great. Thank you to the legislators for taking your time pre-session. This is an important event. I know we all enjoy it. It's a great opportunity to hear things from you. We're going to talk economy, which is always our fun topic. And sad to see that Senator Dinger wasn't able to be here today, but we do thank her for trying. And you are going to hold it down as usual for the Republicans, which is great. So let's just start and get into it. Larry, we're going to start with you. Let's just talk about the budget first. So Governor Ferguson put out his budget. We'd love to get your take, each of your takes on good, bad, ugly. What do you like? What do you not like?
The one of the advantages the governor has when he or she proposes a budget is it doesn't have to balance. It just doesn't. But it is a starting point, and that's what it's designed for. So the governor, particularly this governor, which this is his first real budget, and it simply gives us sort of a couple of guideposts to follow around revenue, around those services that he wants to see maintained and not reduced. So it gives us a beginning point. The legislature will spend 59 days, 22 hours, and 23 minutes. That's my prediction, and we'll pass a budget. So the governor has made it clear around the proposed income tax proposal that's out there that he's supportive of that. Whether that sees its path to fruition remains to be seen. Lots of questions around that issue, so we'll have plenty to talk about there, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think Larry hit one of the ugliest parts of the governor's budget is that it doesn't balance. Part of why it doesn't balance is he ignores the state's 4-year balanced budget requirement, which I think is a really, really important tool our state has for fiscal moderation and prudence. It is the reason why our budget problems aren't dramatically worse than they are. Last year we were up here talking about the $15 billion deficit that was looming. Now we're talking about a $5 billion deficit that was looming. Those numbers would double if we weren't required to balance over a 4-year period. So to sort of ignore that and to begin to suggest maybe we should peel that away, I think is the opposite of the other things the governor has been saying about what he wants for the state and to get back on better fiscal footing. It's also one of the reasons why our state has one of the best bond ratings of any state in the country, which lowers our borrowing costs for things like roads and capital construction. So if we get rid of this requirement, we'll have a worse bond rating most likely, which will raise our costs in other areas. He also almost completely raised the rainy day fund. We already have one of the thinnest rainy day funds of any state in the country. The governor's proposal would take almost all of that existing money out, which I think is really problematic. It would only leave us with a couple days, maybe a week or two of cushion to run the state. So I think those are all deeply concerning. I will point out, as diplomatically as I possibly can be, but I guess I am the only Republican up here, what we saw last session, what we heard last session from the governor didn't match up with what the governor signed at the end of the day. So we will see what happens, but he has so far not proven an ability, for better or worse, to implement the things he says he wants to implement. So just because something's in his budget doesn't mean he's going to have the political power to get it done. There's a mix of good and bad things. There's a variety of spending reductions which are necessary. Some of those I think are wiser than others. Some are more concerning than others. But like Representative Springer said, it's a starting point, and folks will go from there.
I don't know how to work these things. Good morning. It's nice to be here. I think I couldn't really say any more than my colleagues have said, except that I do give the governor a lot of grace. I think he came into a situation with a huge deficit and sort of inherited the budget writers who have been writing the budget and were sort of some of the architects of that deficit situation. And I know that he has a lot of plans about government efficiency and about making programs work for people and holding ourselves accountable as a government for outcomes. I don't think he's had a chance or had a chance when he first came in last session to do as much of that work as he wanted to. I will also just state what may be obvious. It's probably obvious to some of us, but maybe it's not obvious to everybody. There's enormous pressure on our government from our traditional Democratic allies. They have enormous power, and he is very much beholden. Beholden's the wrong word, but has to be extremely respectful of their demands. And the political climate of our state right now is very, very progressive. And there's a feeling that we have a mandate to do a lot of very progressive things. And the governor needs to get on board. Otherwise, he will not be our governor anymore. And that's just a political reality. And he's had quite a bit of turnover in some of the agencies that do the important work in our state. And I want to give him some time and some grace, but we should absolutely not use the budget stabilization account or rainy day fund. We are not in a recessionary condition as of yet. We still have not felt all the things that the federal government is going to do to our state, and it would not be appropriate for us to use emergency funds at this time. And as our minority leader stated, if you compare our state's reserve levels, we are one of the lowest states. Some states reserve their entire budget. I would like to see us be more like that, but I am careful. I throw nickels like they're manhole covers, is what my husband says. So.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We're going to start with Representative Walen. We'll go this way. And I recognize that, generally speaking, the people on the stage are in the moderate lane. I hope you don't mind me saying that. I think that we all appreciate that. So it's a little unfair for you to defend all of the Democratic policies, but I'm going to do it anyway. Bottom line, the people in this room work in business, various sectors. It's not a shock that technology, housing, small business, there are a lot of warning signs in the economy right now. And to quote, and I apologize if Meg's in the room from Microsoft, but Brad Smith did a great job, I think, on this quote recently at an event. I may say it a little bit wrong, but the economy is like a balloon. There's not a popping sound. It's actually an issue of slow leaking of jobs. And there's not a moment in time where you see that the economy is effectively in trouble. Another person I work with in business said effectively that you don't see a PR statement about the jobs that aren't being started here, the businesses that are not being started here. There's no PR around that. You don't see that. So it's almost too late by the time you figure it out. And I guess I wanted to ask we'll start with Amy. Do we need an economic development policy? Because right now it seems like we don't have one as a state.
Yeah, I think we do need an economic development policy, and we shouldn't be relying on third-party advocacy organizations. We have a lot of brain power within our government and within the legislative branch and actually all branches of the government. And I want to underline the point that you made, and there's a big player that's in this room today that came to Olympia and told us, you're not going to see us do a ribbon cutting in another state. You're just going to see us not renew our leases and stop hiring in this state and just, increase our presence in other states quietly. And I guess the answer to your question is yes, we need to have an economic development strategy. In the past, I used to say this when I was mayor of Kirkland, our quality of life is our economic development strategy. Other states are actively marketing themselves to our businesses. If you go to any tech conference, Georgia is there. There are wonderful states there with wonderful attributes and assets and talent pools already there. You know, you may have noticed that some of our tech companies have started to diversify the centers that they exist within, and those centers can be expanded or contracted, and we should be very, very careful that we're not one of the centers that is contracting. And someone spoke earlier on the panel about sort of the ecosystem of the business community, and I've said that a lot of times. I am a business person. If you don't know me, I operate a business. We rely on, when we came to invest in the state of Washington, we looked at a business in California, we looked at a business in Oregon, we looked at a business in Colorado. We said, hey, Boeing, Microsoft, this is 20 years ago, you know, Boeing, Microsoft, Starbucks, these amazing companies, these people are going to want to buy cars for a very long time. And there are people right now, 20 years ago, my age, you know, 20 years ago, I was very young, but they're making those decisions right now, and they're looking at our state, and are they saying, this is a great long-term investment. I can count on stability, a fair playing field, an even playing field, an economic development strategy that cares that my business is here or not. And again, to talk about the politics, and I am a moderate, I would say, and I'm a pragmatic progressive. I'm very progressive on social issues, but very careful with money. The politics of our state are very progressive right now, and there's maybe I will just say arrogance, this idea that these businesses can go, they're not going to leave. We are that fabulous. No one would want to leave the state of Washington. We are amazing. And we are amazing, but businesses have to survive. And it is incredibly, as a retailer, I can just tell you, it is incredibly challenging to stay in business right now. And I know that I sometimes present as a really successful lady from Bellevue, but I'm actually a scrappy lady who started as a cashier in the car business and working as a waitress on weekends. And I have prepared all the tax returns for our business. I know everything about every kind of tax there is that's being proposed, and I'm excited to talk about those, and I know you're going to get to them, Guy, but we should probably close our business and redevelop the land and hopefully get out of that real estate before things collapse. And there's a lot of families that rely on those jobs, and it's just super hard to be in business right now. So do we need an economic development strategy? I'm super sad to see that our Commerce Secretary has left for another role, although I'm excited to see the role he's in.
We all are, yeah.
But yes, I look forward to an economic development strategy that isn't just carried by the Chambers of Commerce, but that is actually carried by the government.
Yeah, I agree with what Representative Walen said. Guy sort of made a comment in the question about sort of defending the policies that the majorities in the legislature have passed. Thankfully, I don't ever have to do that because I never voted for any of them. But I will try to make what I think I can make actually a pretty good case for why folks on the left should support a more sensible economic development strategy. I will also quote our former state commerce director. If you want to tax the rich, you got to have rich people left to tax. If you want to have employee job protections, you need to have jobs left to protect. They should make that guy a chamber director or something. So here's the point that I try to make to my friends on the other side of the aisle. We're Washington State. We're not Mississippi, we're not Alabama, we're Washington State. Like Amy said, we've got a ton of positive attributes to our state. I'm a testament to that. I grew up here in the Puget Sound, went to the East Coast for undergrad, went to the Midwest for law school. Both times, though, came back to Washington State because it's home, because it has so much to offer. We have, Rachel mentioned this in some of her questions in the last panel. We've got the most generous college financial aid package of any state in the country. We've got the highest average starting teacher salary of any state in the country. We've got one of the most robust Medicaid coverage plans, both in terms of who we cover and what we cover of any state in the country. We can do all that because of the state's business climate, at least historically speaking. We can afford to do all that because Boeing decided to call Seattle home 100 years ago. Microsoft decided to call Redmond home 50 years ago. Amazon decided to call Seattle home 25 years ago. If we pursue these progressive tax policies that push those companies out of state, I think I heard from Amazon folks that, while Seattle is taxing them for every job they add, Virginia is paying them for every job that gets added in Virginia. If we continue to push these jobs out of state from existing companies, if we continue to signal to the next generation of Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates that Washington isn't a great place to grow their business and they look to places like Miami or Austin, we're going to lose for generations the ability to have this really robust social safety net that Democrats say they want. So we've got, if we want all those things, and I might differ with Amy and Larry up here on sort of like what we should cover on Medicaid and what's more appropriate for the public versus private sector. But if you take as a given that Democrats are right about where the social safety net should be providing, we need to have a good tax policy so that we have the revenue to fund all these things. If we have a tax policy that drives these companies and jobs out of state, we're never going to be able to afford all the liberal, warm, fuzzy feelings that people say they want.
Ditto. I will only add that in a lot of our progressive friends, they sort of take particularly the East Side tech sector for granted, and the East Side tech sector, to a lot of our progressive friends, has a target on its back. It's a target-rich environment for all things spending, and what Amy and I, in the Democratic caucus, spend a lot of time doing is reminding our progressive friends that, as Drew just said, you can't have progressive policies if you don't have the tax base to pay for them. And the East Side is a powerhouse, and it is because Amazon is here, Boeing has been successful here in the state, Microsoft is here, Expedia is here, Starbucks is here. All of those legacy companies are absolutely crucial, and we should make sure that they stay here. The real issue, I think, was that Amy may have mentioned, it's not as worried about companies picking up and leaving, but I am really worried about companies not expanding.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Okay, I'm going to give you a hard question now. Republicans are not doing well in this state. You do have a national brand issue, I think, in fairness to yourself and Senator Minority Leader Braun. It's a different type of Republican Party here in the state versus the national scene, but you do have that brand issue with Trump. Voters have spoken in the last several elections. There are supermajorities. They're likely to grow again this year, no offense. Voters are saying, especially in Seattle, let's go with socialism. What do you say to that? Like, what do you have to do differently, and why should Democrats not continue to pass all these taxes when that's what the voters are saying we want you to do?
Well, this is a hard question. This is not the hard question that Joe said you were going to give me.
Oh.
Obviously, if there was an easy answer to that, we would have done it already. But I think my job as House Republican leader is to, it's a couple-fold. It's to find candidates that can run in districts that reflect their communities. The kind of person that can be successful in Issaquah isn't going to be the kind of person that is going to be successful in Eastern Washington. I know it's a taxes and budget panel, but illustrative of what we're trying to do. A year or two ago, there was an abortion bill going through the legislature, and Republicans are generally on the pro-life side of things. And so we're having a caucus discussion about it, and I pointed out that, look, not only do Republicans need to win the votes of pro-choice voters, everybody sort of is aware of that, but most of the time that Republicans have been competitive in the legislature, including when Republicans control the state Senate, it included members of the caucus who didn't just win the votes of pro-choice voters, but were pro-choice themselves. The most effective way to win a pro-choice vote in, say, Issaquah is to have a pro-choice politician say, hey, vote for me, I'm pro-choice like you. And so, part of this is find candidates that fit their districts in these ways. Part of it is we just need to keep doing a better and better job of getting the message out. Yeah, we've got a lot of headwinds. That's not new. George W. Bush was also pretty unpopular. That was sort of what caused most of the East Side to begin to shift. In the early 2000s, almost every East King County seat was occupied by Republican, and the bottom kind of fell out in 2006. So we've got headwinds. The national brand is unpopular. There's just an utter lack of media presence covering Olympia. I mentioned I grew up in Olympia actually, and I remember as a kid reading the Olympia, and I mean every day there'd be 3-4 pages of stories about what was going on in the legislature that day. Now the Olympian and News Tribune have got like one reporter total. There's just no coverage of what we do. I think it's really to the detriment of the state, and so that makes our work harder as Republicans to make sure the state and voters understand what folks are doing. So, I mean, those are the twin aims. We got to find candidates that fit the districts. We got to do a better job spreading the message to understand, look, you can think what you want about Donald Trump or whoever the Democrats run in 2028. That's fine, but we live in a federal system, and you also get to vote for state races, and we've got a different set of issues that matter here, and people are welcome to split their vote and vote for a Democrat for president and Republicans for the legislature.
It's okay. And I'm sorry to give you a curveball, but Joe says I can ask whatever I want. So, I like to throw curveballs out there. Larry, let's start with you on this one. Let's talk about the income tax. Let's talk about the income tax. So, and Amy, I'd like to hear your thoughts as well, and certainly Drew as well. First of all, do you think it's going to pass? And then second of all, the income tax, the 9.9% income tax on salaries over $1 million. Obviously, this is a attempt to overturn the Supreme Court rulings of the past, which will play out in court. But let's assume that does happen with the Supreme Court, which I think is probably likely, is my take. Why should the public, while it's millionaires now, why should we believe Democrats that it's not going to be a graduated income tax in 2030 on lower salaries, given the history of deals being broken, whether that's on the WIA account or other things? Capital gains started, it got raised, WIA got started, it got raised 3 times. So it seems like a deal is no longer a deal in Olympia. So why should the public assume that it's not going to be an income tax on them by 2031?
You shouldn't. Not to be flip about it, but if past history is prologue, you probably shouldn't necessarily believe that. I think one of the problems that we have, and this is going to be a central debate in this upcoming session, and while many of us, myself included, believe that a graduated income tax is a fair progressive tax that should pay for the services that the state needs. That said, if you want to do that, then you should automatically eliminate those taxes that are the most regressive. That's the B&O tax and the sales tax. So unless you do both of those things together, it's a false promise. And just the mechanics of an income, these are the questions that are going to be asked. I don't have an answer for them yet. We'll find that out as the session progresses. But the proposal will probably end up in court. We won't know or collect a dime, even if it's held up by the court, for 2 or 3 years. In the meantime, we haven't reduced a single regressive tax or lowered the B&O tax, and the argument will be, well, that will increase our deficit. So my question will be, then why are we doing this? Why don't we wait until we've got a revenue forecast that kind of looks good? That's the time you should start talking about a different tax system. We also just a year ago put in statute that an income tax is not going to be passed in Washington. I mean, we accepted the public's vote. And within a year, we're proposing an income tax. Yeah, you should probably be skeptical.
As always, we love your intellectual honesty on this, on policy. I'm getting the call. Can we just be quick on the answers? Yeah, let me start with Drew.
Yeah, I mean, again, not a lot to add from what Larry said. I mean, think about how many times the state has lowered the sales tax rate, lowered your property tax rate, lowered your B&O tax rate. Think about how many times the state's increased the rate. It's zero on the one hand and lots of times on the other. The legislature never reduces taxes. So yes, it could be millionaires today, but it's going to be you and me tomorrow. So I appreciate Larry's candor and forthrightness. I mean, I think that's going to be our biggest concern is, not protecting millionaires today, but protecting people like you and me tomorrow. And I appreciate his point too about the initiative that was passed. This is why folks hate politicians. You got the Senate Majority Leader bringing a bill to the floor last session to prohibit an income tax, and then 9 months later saying, it was a pie crust promise. We can do whatever we want. It was an easily made promise. We can easily break it. I said this to a panel a couple of weeks ago. I mean, I think if Democrats were serious about this idea, the proposal should look like it should be a constitutional amendment. So you put in Constitution who this is who we're going to tax, so it can't be easily ratcheted up over time. And they simultaneously reduce the regressive taxes like the sales tax and the B&O tax. When Democrats don't ever, I mean, Larry and Amy are great, but when the other Democrats don't talk about reducing regressive taxes, they only talk about raising taxes on other people. They're just using the argument of regressivity as a fig leaf to grow the size of government and to hit groups they don't like with higher taxes. If people were truly serious about fixing a regressive tax structure, the first thing they would be looking to is how do we relieve the burden on those who can least afford to pay it. But nobody ever does that. Hardly anybody ever does that. Instead, it's only about who don't we like, who can we go tax tomorrow. And that's why I think it's an unserious argument, but I think we'd be much better, the proposal would be a lot more serious if from the beginning they said, we're gonna put it in the Constitution so we can't ratchet it up all the time, and we're gonna simultaneously offset the regressive taxes when we're raising progressive taxes. But when nobody says that, it's an unserious proposal that's just a sheer money grab.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, do you think it's passed? And how do you feel about the...
I think that, I guess I would just want to point out process, and that is that there's no bill draft. So if I'm running first of all, we spent millions of dollars on a tax structure work group. It came out with we should go to a margins tax and we should get rid of the property tax cap lift. That was the bipartisan agreement, or the limitation tied to inflation and population. This is not that. So then, okay, income tax, fair. Let's talk about that. It should be a part of structural tax reform. I completely agree. It should be in the Constitution. It's the only way that voters will trust us. We have to limit it, and we have to cut the sales tax, do the three-legged stool thing that Idaho did. But I have a million questions about this, and there is no bill. And that is the thing that is very frustrating to me, is that we don't stakeholder revenue. If we'd stakeholder every single policy that we ever pass, except revenue, which we throw out last week, and sales tax on services, just an example, and then we end up with flawed policy. I want to know if you paid REIT on it, is that going to be taxed? If you paid cap gains on it, is that going to be taxed? If you take a withdrawal from your 401k, is that going to be taxed? If you take your deferred comp out of your pension fund, if you're a public employee, again, presuming it's not going to just be millionaires forever, is that going to be taxed? And it's not me. CPAs should be poring over this thing, saying how will people avoid it? What should we be doing? Will they use trusts? What will happen to the B&O tax, because they'll divert distribution income out of their companies to avoid W-2 types taxation? We need to think this through, and we don't even have a bill, and I just call process fail.
This is why Amy and I have to stick together for protection.
Thank you so much. I know we're a little bit over time. Thank you. Let's give these guys a round of applause. Thank you so much.
Let's start with the bright spot from the last session, and that is condo reform. Representatives Entenman and Salahuddin, you were sponsors of this legislation, which was House Bill 1403, and it was a great first step in the condo reform process. So would you tell us a bit about the legislation, and more importantly, do you think it will help, and what additional reforms will be needed?
Yeah, well, thank you so much. Oh, yeah, this microphone works. Really appreciate it. Hello, everyone. Osman Salahuddin, representative from the 48th. So welcome to the 48th, alongside my great colleague, Rep. Walen here. I know we're short on time, so just to dive right in, condo reform, very excited to not just be a co-sponsor on that bill, but also support it through the votes. Making sure that condos and constructing condominiums in our state is easier, and not just going the route of apartment buildings, but long-term home ownership, and providing that opportunity is something that I've been very supportive of, not just when I was on the city council in Redmond, but continuing on in the state legislature. This bill essentially creates more protection for those that want to develop condominiums and give less liability on the side of that construction. For the sake of time, I will just say we need to continue more opportunities like this. We need to incentivize our local jurisdictions to prioritize development of long-term housing investments, so that those that are young like myself, those that want to mobilize upwards in the housing market, can start with a starter condo, can start with a smaller home, and continue continue to move up so that they're invested in the community that they want to live in, that they want to prioritize.
Thank you. I would also say that we want to continue to have protections for our first-time home buyers and for our seniors. If we're thinking about what is happening in the housing market now, people are stuck. For example, I live in a 3,000 square foot house with my husband and I, since we recently lost our dog. It's 3 bedrooms, it's 2 people, it's big, it's too much. I would love to be able to move to a smaller place, maybe a condo, but right now the investment in a condo that I would make is...
Well, hopefully you guys could still hear me. I was trying to shout pretty loudly. So we're excited about partnering on this Office of Housing, similar to the City of Bellevue when I was on the council, and how we might do more with that. One of the bills that I had that did not advance this last session was a revolving low-interest home ownership for developers to look at how we do that. So one of the things I'm thinking about is maybe as we're standing up this Office of Housing at the state level, we should have them look at what are all the different options that we could pursue, because the reason that bill didn't move forward was I was told, you know, we have no money. How are you going to seed money to have a revolving home ownership low-income loan program? Well, then let's figure out how we do more of that. So I would say that both in the permitting side as well as the housing and how we finance. And then lastly, the other thing that I've been working on and looking at is, as you know, housing is not just about land use and permitting, it's also making sure that we have the infrastructure. So how are we looking at making sure that we're looking at all of those together, right? Let's like walk, talk, and chew gum at the same time. Because if we only work on one thing, it'll be stretched for another decade before we get more housing.
Representative Entenman, you're on committees for both housing and transportation, so you didn't really want to cut yourself any slack, did you? It's going to be a tough one. Very good, very good. Well, with both of those massive issues now directly in your job description, what do you realistically think will actually get done in these committees this next session, and what do you hope will get done?
What I think will get done is that, well, we will be working with the governor on that Office of Housing that he has proposed. What I hope will get done is that we look at the maintenance budget for transportation and fix what we already have. I think that there are areas in our state, when I think about 167 and the Kent-Auburn Valley, and we've just had that flooding in that particular area. There is some maintenance that's going to need to be done. We also need to figure out if we have, or how we can work with the Army Corps of Engineers to make sure we don't have as much flooding as we've had this past atmospheric river. And when I think about what I hope to do, I just really hope to maintain what we've already done, and to also think about safety when we think about walkability for our communities and riding bikes in our communities. I'm not sure that Kent or Auburn would need the bike lanes like they have in Seattle, but I would like our children to be able, and my grandchildren, to be able to walk to and from school safely. So those are the things I hope that we can do.
Thank you. One of the common cost drivers for all development, but particularly for housing, is, of course, parking requirements. And the legislature made great progress on this issue this last session, but too often surface retail requirements are also killing housing projects across the region. Cities place requirements to build commercial space in these housing projects that the market isn't asking for, and with it, they force renters to bear the cost in the unlikely event that that retail space, well, first of all, in the unlikely event that the building gets built in the first place, that it'll pencil in the pro forma, but secondly, that retail space could sit vacant for years. And so those renters have to subsidize that. How do you view these requirements, and would you be open to relaxing them as a way of promoting housing development?
Absolutely. I think we should be looking at all options available to us. This isn't the question you asked, but I will say that one of the things when I was on the Bellevue City Council, I really wanted us to work on was finding ways for helping the commercial rents to be more affordable, because we know that as we build new buildings, those rents are not affordable, so then we end up with a lot of vacancies. So I think that when we look at that whole community, we need to really look at all of the policies that at the time we thought was a really good idea, but ultimately may be creating the very issues that we're talking about.
All right. Same? Okay. All right. Well, even though this is the transportation and housing policy, one of the key infrastructure issues that plagues our region is an adequate supply of energy. We've alluded to that a bit in the past with a couple other panels. Washington has passed requirements banning the sale of gas automobiles by 2035, but experts have already warned that we don't have the energy generation or transmission infrastructure to power our existing growth needs, specifically warning that new renewable energy sources will not be able to maintain base load. Some legislators are calling on the removal of electricity generating dams in Southwest Washington, and now Washington and the Trump administration are at loggerheads over the closure of the TransAlta coal-fired electrical facility. How will policymakers square their policies so that they can meet the dramatically increasing state demand for power? And will these policies make it more expensive and difficult to generate that power?
Who would like that one? You want to start?
So I'm going to say energy and the environment is not one of the committees that I'm on, of the 4 committees, but I will take it. I will say this. First of all, being at loggerheads with the federal administration is not a good place for Washington to be. I will say that, number one. Number two, we have to think about long-term policy, and we have to think about our power grid, and we think about what our alternative energy sources are. I'm not sure, and I will admit this, that we've done enough to understand the impact of saying, and I know that I voted for it, so, that we will not have a certain type of car by 2035. I think we might need to move that out a little bit. I think we should have that flexibility if we see that we can't do what we want to do. We have not talked about AI and its generation and its tug on the grid. We have a lot of things that are pulling on our electrical grid. We need to consider all of those things, and I'm not sure we thought about AI in the same way that we maybe could have when we thought about what we wanted to do with electric cars.
Yeah, and likewise, I'm not on the Energy Environment Committee, but I have been talking a lot with local stakeholders, specifically Puget Sound Energy, on the demands that our grid requires. And I think we as a community, we as a region, we as a state need to move forward, just like Rep. Entenman just mentioned, with AI at the forefront, not in how we are restructuring government or how we're restructuring our businesses, but knowing that it exists in everything that we're doing. We have to build data centers to be stay competitive in our state with our technological sector, and we need to make sure that we're doing that in a very smart way. So from a perspective of what has been passed and what needs to continue to be passed, we need to look at this every single day. I know Larry mentioned when talking about taxes to be skeptical of what might continue to change, but I think as we're developing new innovation, we need to look at it the flip side on how can we improve what's been done before. I really think that a lot of it also ties into the permitting that we have, and this wasn't really mentioned when we were talking about the housing, but there are a lot of innovative permitting solutions that we can cultivate with our partners in the energy sector to ensure that we're not stifling the development that needs to happen while maintaining the growth that is going to continue to happen.
Yeah, and I will just add that I am recently joined the Joint Energy Committee at the state level, and I'm on the CSG Energy and the Grid Committee. That's with other legislators from around the Western region, Western states. And I agree with my colleagues, just like with every other policy you see, that as we know more, we make adjustments, right? So I would say similar to the Clean Building Standard, what you saw this session was that there was a bill that gave some latitude for those public agencies like school districts that are struggling to get their buildings to that Clean Building Standard by the deadline, that we're giving a little more latitude to that. So similar to that, I think we need to be looking at the same thing, because I would say that I remember being in Bellevue, 5, 6 years ago when we had the Energize East Side project, and all the discussion around the fact that, well, we're doing all this with energy efficiency. Do we really need the enhanced transmission lines? And look at where we are today in terms of the energy demands that we have. I was one of the legislators that went to Denmark to learn about industrial symbiosis, right? And how we really think about the different technologies that are possible to give us all the tools in our toolbox to be able to look at energy and how we reduce waste and recycle and have a circular economy. So lots to do. And reach out to us, because the ideas come from all of you, right? Not from us as just legislators.
Great, thank you. Representative Salahuddin, you mentioned permitting, so let's talk about permit streamlining. That was another issue the legislature began tackling last year, with local municipalities being largely responsible for reforming their own processes under state pressure to increase the housing supply. How do you think our local jurisdictions have been performing? And do you prefer this more hands-off way of allowing cities to streamline as they see fit? Or is a standardized approach necessary to get things built?
Thank you for this question. I just want to give a really big shout out to the City of Bellevue, City of Redmond, and City of Kirkland, all of who are here today. And I'm very blessed to have these three jurisdictions as well as the Points communities in the 48th, because I would say, sorry to all of the other legislators who don't have these cities, but these are some of the most innovative cities when it comes to not just housing development and growth, but permitting as well. I know that the City of Bellevue has launched they had a pilot, and I believe they're moving forward full-time, called GovStream.ai, and this is a AI-based permitting software that allows you to streamline the permits that come in, and this is a huge bottleneck that many jurisdictions are seeing, whether it's in housing or commercial development. And we need to make sure that we are moving things as seamlessly and quickly as possible while maintaining, sort of the integrity of the process there as well. I believe Rep. Walen this past session, put forward a budget request for E-City Gov Alliance, and the City of Redmond, Kirkland, and Bellevue had all supported. This unfortunately didn't pass. We'll continue to make strides towards this sort of nonprofit program, which does allow for support when it comes to permitting. And I think we need to make sure that we're giving the from my time on City Council, I believe that the value in letting the cities decide what they're doing with the permitting and the decisions on zoning in their own jurisdictions is incredibly valuable. So I would definitely support that.
Yeah, and I would add that one of the things I'm interested in is, as we stand up the State Office of Housing, recognizing that even though we're trying to make things better at the state level, they become unfunded mandates. So one of the things I'm going to be pushing for is making sure that we actually provide some grant funding to cities to be able to do the work they do to adopt these policies. I want to actually thank Bellevue, because they gave me a chart that shows in the last 4 years we passed 15 housing bills that needed to have changes to their zoning or their code. And it looks like only half of those have actually been required to be implemented. So there's a lot of different policies that need to be worked on. And I came from representing the largest city in East King County to one of the smallest, where they have very few resources to be able to make these updates. So I think we owe it to the cities to actually give them the resources they need to make these changes.
Thank you. And in speaking about code, we've just recently seen Governor Newsom of California recognizing that there are some code changes that could help with housing production. And so he's put a 6-year stay on new energy codes and suspended a bunch of onerous requirements in the state's Environmental Protection Act. Yes or no, would you support following in his footsteps on this issue? Thumbs up or thumbs down? Okay, more to discuss on that. We need to shift gears into transportation because we just have a couple minutes left. The legislature passed a 2-year transportation budget last April with a modest fee and gas tax increase. But now what is on the horizon? What specific transportation topics do you think will dominate the upcoming session?
Funding ferries. The governor has proposed, I think it was $150 billion. Funding ferries is going to be the biggest thing.
Not necessarily what the legislature will work on, but I think our region as a whole needs to prioritize, especially on the east side, the light rail extension over I-90. With the World Cup coming, we need to make sure that we are ready on the east side to prepare for what will be one of the biggest events in Seattle's history.
Yeah, and I would add that what Rep. Hall said earlier about preservation and maintenance, I think that's going to be a really interesting piece. We passed a bill for a work group on streamlining transportation project permitting. I look forward to seeing what comes out of that. And then I will just say that for me, I'm on the Transportation Committee as well, that my goal is to figure out as we spend the money, how do we do it the most effectively as WashDOT, so that as we look at every dollar that we spend, we're giving them all the tools to be able to be as effective as possible. Because I will just say that for ferries, we have so much lessons learned from the contracts that we have for the new electric ferries and the modern and the conversion, that we cannot repeat some of the things that we learned from those procurements. We have to do better.
Thank you. We've got time for one last question, and this is going to be another thumbs up or thumbs down. And that has to do with transportation funding. We've passed some gas tax increases. How do you feel about all of that now? And what about the old road usage charge? Is that conversation coming back in the next year? Thumbs up or thumbs down?
Yeah. The question is it coming back?
It is still on the table because, as you know, we have a biennial budget. And I would say that for me, I believe that if we're going to talk about getting out of being regressive, that we have to look at, and I might actually reframe the label to be a pavement impact fee, that we should be looking at an equity around those vehicles and the impact on our pavements, because we're talking about preservation and maintenance and all of the funding that's needed to address that, and we know the gas tax is not the way.
Thank you. All right. I want to thank our distinguished representatives for joining us for this candid conversation, and I want to thank all of you for being here. I believe someone else is coming up after me to say goodbye to you, so stay put in your seats for just a few more minutes, and good luck, representatives.
Thank you, Carrie. Hello, everyone. My name is Kimberly Ellertson. I'm the Executive Director of the Woodinville Chamber of Commerce, and I get to give our closing remarks today. Thank you to everyone here, coalition members, legislators, attendees. You've all helped to make this event possible. We don't get very many opportunities to have these blunt conversations about the problems that are facing our business community, let alone how we can band with the legislature and address these problems. So we're very grateful that you all share these same values and commitment to our community. I want to take a minute to thank our sponsors. Thank you to our presenting sponsor, Amazon, our leadership sponsor, Microsoft, our advocacy sponsors, T-Mobile, DoorDash, and TikTok. And another shout out goes to our reception sponsor, Meta, our event partners, Boeing, Salesforce, Port of Seattle. We couldn't do this without your support. If you'll give them a round of applause. Lastly, thank you to all the coalition members who make this possible. Working alongside of you is a true testament to our region's passion for fostering sustainable, healthy growth in our communities. I'd love to ask each of the respective chamber executive directors to please stand so we can recognize them. If any of you in attendance are interested in joining your local Chamber of Commerce, I would obviously highly recommend that, and now you know who to talk to. We hope you'll all stay involved with the coalition while we jump headfirst into session. We'll be heading down to Olympia for Chamber Day on February 18th, so I hope we get to see a lot of our legislators there. We'll conclude the session with our legislative wrap-up in the spring, and that's always a great event to attend. So thank you all for joining us today. We look forward to working with you throughout the legislative session, and happy 2026.